I look back through this, I think, let's just, everybody got a sheet? Everybody got a sheet? Let's just answer those questions before we even read that are on the study 5 there. Because I think we can do that because we all know it pretty well. What was God's part on Noah's salvation, and what was Noah's part? Anybody? I mean, one thing that I would say right off the bat about Noah is Noah walked with God. And that's probably the biggest thing. He walked with God. And there's a huge thing in that for us, because what are we supposed to do? Walk with God, you know. And it's a lot easier for us to walk with God because he's now reachable because of Jesus Christ. In that time, God picked and chose who he was going to walk with based on your obedience. And he still looks for us to be obedient. I think that's probably Noah's. Tim, did you agree with me? Or I'll ask David since, he's right next to me. What's you think his obedience was part of that as far as why Noah, that's his part of his salvation was Noah, was because he was the only one that would listen to God? I mean, to me that's...
Well, I think obedience has so much to do with it, but I think he wanted to please God.
Yeah.
He wanted to please him because he knew that he was real. He knew that.
I mean, can you imagine? I can't imagine
The faith he had.
the faith, and then also the whole world was absolutely evil. I mean, every bit of it. I mean, like 100% murdering each other, horrible,
Yeah, like Sodom
disgusting,
and Gomorrah
like
tattoos.
just horrible. And yet he was faithful, and he believed God. And I think that's it. And God's part was that I guess he chose Noah, because of his obedience. And to me, that's the most important. I didn't look up Ephesians 2:8 or Philippians 2:12 or 13 and 1 Peter 1:5, but y'all can if you want to. It says, in the ark, Noah was not saved from being affected by the flood at all, but he was brought safely through it, saved through water, 1 Peter 3:20. And what similar does the gospel of Christ offer salvation from God's judgment upon sin? Remember what we said about
Oh, being baptized?
remember what we said about the pitch in the boat?
I
It
know.
was the same. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was
Yeah,
trying to read, you were reading fast and I'm trying to catch up to you to get to where you're at.
When we were talking about how the boat was constructed, the word that they
Uh-huh.
used for pitch in the boats, the thing that they put, inside to keep it, make it waterproof, is the root word of that is the same word as atonement. So it's like Christ's blood covering the boat. It protected them inside the
Oh,
boat.
you're talking about like the laminate stuff that goes on
It's
it.
sticky. It's like tar.
Yeah, that's what I was
But the
thinking.
word they chose to use in that
Is pitch.
the Greek word has the root of atonement in it. So it's the idea that because they went into the ark, you realize they didn't close the door on the ark either. God closed the door and God opened the door, and there was no rudder on that boat. It went where God sent it, and so it's where God made it possible for it to land. In other words, there was nothing in the whole Noah experience that they were steering. They didn't open it, they didn't shut it, they didn't do any of those things. So think about that as far as letting God. That's really letting go and letting God. That you go up inside that boat, you wait for God to shut the door, you wait for God to let you out. That's a whole lot of faith to be able to do that. I mean, that's how our walk is supposed to be. To trust him through, and how horrible it must have been to be sitting there in that boat when you hear all the people screaming outside and it starts to lift and rock and creak, because the water's getting high enough, and all you hear is just all of humanity screaming and hollering outside.
Well, he told them that all the time. They were sitting there jumping at him. You're
Just
building a
think about
boat.
when he's building the boat, they're cursing him and telling him what a
Exactly.
fool he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An idiot.
And now when it starts to rain,
Yeah.
they're like, let us in. Oh,
And
sorry.
then we talked about the fact there's never been rain before. You can read
Yeah.
it, you can look it up. There's never been rain before this moment. So they didn't even know what that was when it started falling.
I mean, the trees weren't even big enough to build anything out of. And God made the trees grow without rain. I mean,
You know, that's one thing I never really thought about, you know?
Well, of course, he watered from the ground. He
Right,
bubbled up out of the
right,
ground,
yeah.
yeah. And
The dew
and the
would
dew
come
was
up.
heavy, so
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
had created a tropical paradise, is what we
Oh, yeah,
understand.
that grows supernaturally fast.
Yeah, so he had the capability.
Well, everything we talk about, supernatural stuff.
All right, I'm gonna start at 8:20. I may be running over where we've been, but that's a good place to start. It said, then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. And the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. I'm gonna stop right there. He said he'll never again curse man, but he didn't say man had changed, did he? He said that a man's heart is evil from his youth. Nothing changed. I mean, wiped out all humanity and we started over. But God is admitting right there that we are evil, and we are evil from our youth. So that's just one. But he did promise he would never destroy every living thing again.
Right.
He didn't say I wouldn't destroy some, or nearly all. He just said I won't destroy everything. And he said, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. So basically all that we understand and know about the seasons and time are going to stay pretty constant to the very end. All right, who wants to read chapter 9? Who's a good reader? Or read,
I will.
it goes all the way to 29. I'd read about, hang on. Read all the way to 17.
Okay. Chapter 9, right?
Yep.
And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh was the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of every man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For he, in the image of God, made he man. And you, be ye fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, and every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth, and I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token, or bow. I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me.
Stop there. Stop.
Okay,
I just realized how many questions we got over there.
sorry.
It's all right. It's all right.
But, yeah, the rainbow, right?
The rainbow. And of course, I've shared this before, but the how do I say this? Not politically correctly.
LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys and gals and whatever else.
It's
their rainbow has 6 colors instead of 7.
Wow.
It's missing, I forget which one it's missing, but it's kind of ironic, because 7 is the number of completion, and 6 is the number of man, where we get the idea of 666, triple man is the worst thing in the world. Just to kind of throw that out there, I just thought that was interesting. I don't know that it was by design, but, you know, you can go whichever way you want to go with that, but yeah, I mean, I don't like the fact that God's covenant with man, that anybody would use that symbol any other way. It's just not good. I mean, it's just not, it's like somebody using the cross, you know, in some other way that they shouldn't use it. And we see that a lot. People have crosses and turn them upside down and do all kind of horrible things with tattoos with them. And I don't mind anybody having a cross tattoo. I'm just saying there's people that do sacrilegious things with them. That's a different deal. As far as what we're talking about in this particular section of verses, it talks about how the animals are afraid of us, and I had y'all laughing last time I talked about that, because we couldn't defend ourselves against house cats. If we weren't in dominion over the animals, we wouldn't make it. You know, we're without weapons. I mean, seriously. I mean, if there were 40 cats in this room and me, and I had nothing, I probably wouldn't make it out if they had intent of killing me. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being very honest. It's just, we are not equipped, but God made them under us. I mean, that's why they run from him. That's why most things, until they're cornered, will run from a human.
Mm-hmm.
Except
They have
in
no-
Africa.
Huh? Except in Africa. Well, it's just, you know, it's a little, it depends on the situation, if they're hungry and all that. But we're not the first choice. I'll just say it like that. We are not their first choice. God has put into them a fear of us. And yeah, I mean, if you look like a seal and you're wearing a wetsuit, I kind of get the whole shark. But he thought you were a seal. That's the thing. He thought you were a seal. There's a difference. He didn't think you were a human. We must taste bad. Maybe that's what the deal is. I don't know.
Yes,
Anyway.
it tastes like rubber.
Tastes like rubber. Anyway.
Yeah.
It talks about all the food that God set aside for us. We're not supposed to, you know, eat the blood out of it, whatever. But then it also talks about how God holds us accountable for the life of another man. And, you know, this is long before the commandments come to be. And we'll see as we go through the book of Genesis, somewhere, somehow, they had a set of rules. They had laws. They just weren't all written in this book. And you'll see that with, like I'm studying right now, I'm studying on Joseph. And Joseph, you know, wouldn't sleep with Potiphar's wife because he knew it was adulterous, he knew it was wrong. But you gotta realize there's no book of Moses yet. There's no laws that are spelled out. But there is some understanding of right and wrong and what God has put in place. And so even at this point, there is an understanding of right and wrong and what you should and shouldn't do, even though there's not a law book. So it makes me wonder I mean, God spoke to these men, but they never wrote down any specific laws.
So the conscience.
The conscience, yes, of course it is. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Well, like, you know how you were saying that it was like the direct line from God to Adam and Eve, and as far as expectations and
Right.
their purpose and whatever.
Right,
law
like,
he
and
did.
we also talked about how everything that was said to Adam was told through Methuselah to Noah,
Yeah.
and Noah carried it through. You know what I mean? So whatever, it never got lost. Actually, I mean, that's what's so crazy is Adam knew Noah, and Noah knew Methuselah. Adam knew Methuselah, and Methuselah knew Noah. So they could actually transfer whatever God said directly through, which carried through on the other side of the ark. You know, I mean,
So you think like some of them, like the one you're talking about, just maybe was a little more spiritually, like Joseph was just a little more spiritually.
understood what God was trying to, I mean, but I do believe that there's they had some sort of basic set of rules, and maybe they just weren't put in stone literally, you know, until Moses, you know. I mean, they had some understanding of that.
David has knows on the head, word conscience used 30 times in scripture. It's an inheritance, it's a right and wrong, everybody's born with.
And that's one thing, when I see people who have come out of addiction, I think the first thing that really comes back to them is conscience. And it's overwhelming when you figure out, oh, I've lost my daughter, I've lost my son, I've lost my job, I've lost my life, I've lost all these things. There was a time I didn't care about anything else, you know, but because your conscience, it was gone. There was no, you know, and I think God put a conscience in us, or we would all be horribly, and that's and what God said earlier with Noah. He said, I will not always strive with men. And what he meant by that was, I will not always give them a conscience. I'm going to let them do evil and do it continuously. And so that's what really, when God pulls his hand off of your life, you're so far gone that he removes the conscience from you. That's a bad place to be, because, you know, you need that little voice in there going, oh, don't do that, you know. And, you know, once you're a Christian and you're saved, the Holy Spirit takes that conscience up to here. He'll knock you down. He'll make you stumble. He'll make you mess up and make you stop doing it. I mean, I think and that's the reason God chases after those he loves so much, is because he don't want to lose you. And I think that's important. But there is a place in time where people are so far gone that God will let them go. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but if you weren't ever his,
Is that
if
the
you were,
reprobate part?
yeah, if you were ever his, it's a different story. He's going to fight for you. Now, you don't have to, it's still free will. I mean, to my opinion, anyway. Let's go ahead and do the first question, because she read it quite a bit. What did Noah's altar and burnt offering signify? Did we get that?
That was an 8, I think.
That was an 8, okay.
Maybe.
Reflect on Noah's position after they lived. How did God encourage him? Well, he promised him, he made an oath with him that he would never kill all mankind. He talked about the animals, what you could eat and all that, and he provided all that for him. There we go, we are in that section. What makes human life supremely precious, and what kind of penalty is set out here for the murderer? Anybody want to answer that one?
The murderer will be murdered,
Yep. But what makes human life precious?
because God made it.
I think we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about how God breathed life into Adam, the Holy Spirit, the soul. Animals don't have souls. So the PETA people hate me, but I'm not saying dogs are going to go to heaven. I mean, I'm saying that there'll be heaven on earth and there'll be animals here, but in the soul situation, you know, there's no such thing as a dog doesn't have a soul. Does that make, I mean, you know what I mean? That's the difference. That's what makes human lives precious to God is, and I'm gonna get in trouble with all those people, those cat lovers and dog lovers.
I think, you know, with their personalities, I've had dogs I've loved and I've had dogs I didn't like.
Yeah.
But I just think with their personalities that they do have a soul in them, until my favorite dog was eating out of the litter box the other night, so then I wasn't too sure about him, so.
Oh my God.
Bugs.
Anyway,
Bugsy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Something ate him? The mama ate him?
No, he
No,
was
no.
eating out of the cat litter
Oh,
box.
Oh,
eating food.
I thought you said he got eaten out of the dog
Yeah, I
had
think his
litters.
soul's gone.
Oh, God.
He'd be a doggone for sure.
Favorite
but, you know,
puppy. Totally missed that, sorry. I thought the
I
dog
think,
had
you
a litter
know,
of puppies.
the animal, one thing God made the hierarchy is the animals are here for us, not the other way around.
Right.
And I think those personality traits, he gave them to them so they would be friendly and love on us and,
For certain people, right?
right, for certain people. Yeah, exactly.
Like Christmas
Like Crystal.
and Nick and Hunter.
Let's go, number 4. What can we learn here concerning the place and manner of covenant making? Can you think of other visible tokens and pledges that seal covenants? 9:13, I guess we're going back to. This does not imply that the rainbow was not seen for the first time, was now seen for the first time, but that God made it a token of covenant promised Noah. So what do you think about that? I'll throw that on Tim. Do you think the rainbows were around prior to that? Because he said he set a bow in the sky. I don't think there was one before that.
Not if it wasn't raining.
Couldn't have, didn't have rain.
That's true. So this guy's questioning the fact that there was rain before. I was like, okay, whatever. But, so he's kind of missing the point. You never had rain before, so how could you have
What would
rain?
be the purpose of a rainbow if
There's
there's
no rain. Yes, exactly.
That'd be like
That's why it's just a
Dubo.
bow.
That'd be DeBow.
Well, and I think we forget the fact that it is a bow. She's correct. Her translation is correct in the sense of an archer and a weapon of war and destruction. I mean, you know, it's not, I mean, we think of the pretty part of it, but the idea is that it was truly a bow. I mean, it was a killing machine, as she said. So it's important that we understand that, but that's God saying, I'm going to withhold my killing power, is the point of it.
Yeah.
So where were you, let's see, we got 10, we're still in,
You told me to stop at 18.
okay, let's roll again.
Now, what are you, am I reading this?
Well, you stopped before that, right? 'Cause I stopped-
Yeah, I stopped in 17,
Okay.
so,
18 is, let's just stop right there before we even read it. And I'm just not, just because of the Shem, Ham, and Japheth thing, I want us to talk just a second. Do we understand that all peoples on the earth came from Shem, Ham, and Japheth? I mean, it's important. Those are actual groups of people. I mean, Shem is where we get the word Semitic, the Semitic people, which is the Jewish people. And then the people that are related to the Jewish people came from Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And I'm trying to remember who's who, and I'm gonna get confused. Tim, can you help me? I'm trying to remember. I think Japheth was the Asian folks, and I think,
I really don't know.
anyway, it's important because all the people groups of the world came from these three groups of people. And the other piece of that is, when we get to the reading about Peleg here in just a second, and the Tower of Babel and all those things, you'll see that all of these people had to move around because of the Tower of Babel. He's confused their speech, and they went off in groups. Well, then God divided the continents, and we've talked about this before. You ever seen how you push all the continents back together on a map? You ever looked at that?
Pangea.
What?
Pangea.
Pangea.
I have a question.
the raised maps?
I'm talking about take all continents on planet
Uh-huh.
Earth. You can shove them all together, and they fit like a perfect puzzle pieces.
That's cool.
Go look, just look at,
You
no,
want
look- just go look at the globe. Just go look at the globe,
I do,
and you
yeah.
can see where God. And so.
And so whenever,
It's out of sequence in here, but that is, what they say is this is a story inside of a story. So in chapter 10, it talks about God dividing the continents. In chapter 11, it talks about the Tower of Babel. What they're saying is that when God did the Tower of Babel thing, and he confused everybody's language, okay, they became people groups, and they all moved to a certain continent, but they weren't divided yet. So then he pushed them all apart. Well, then those folks, wherever they were at, they how you want to say, they grew and lived there for thousands of years, and they stayed different than the other people. I mean,
So what is the 12 tribes of Israel compared to that? Is that anything like
no,
that?
no, because
completely different?
we'll talk about that because we'll get to Abraham at
I
some point.
have, okay, this is talking about Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So Shem wasn't the oldest, but he's the messianic line.
Okay,
And then down here it says Japheth is from the verb meaning to enlarge. His descendants would receive the temporal blessings along with the prospect of participant with Shem, dwell in the tents of Shem.
okay.
And they dominated the greater northern frontier of the Aegean Sea to the highlands of Iran and northward to the steppes beyond the shores of the Black Sea. which-
I'll have to find it and bring it to you guys because
Yeah.
it spells out who everybody is,
It would have,
and I don't want to mess it up and mislead you because I don't memorize this stuff, but it is important to see that the beginning of time, that the continents were all together, the people all spoke one language, and that kind of got out of control. And I just wanted you to do that, to say that before we read all this, and you can take off and go ahead.
oh, am I reading again?
Or whoever wants to read, whoever's up.
Okay, and God said to Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, and Ham, and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole world overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it up both on their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah woke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord of Shem, and Canaan shall be this servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
Okay. Do we need to, what do we have here? What questions are we? we.
So the next one jumps to chapter 10.
Okay. That's a lot complicated to explain, the whole story of Noah. I'm not gonna get off into that, but I will next week. I'll bring the who's who and what's what.
So mine says Japheth was the descendants of the Gentiles, Ham
Right.
was descendants of the Canaanites, and Shem of whom came Peleg.
And so my deal would be, Shem would be the Jewish people, Japheth would be the European people, and I'm trying to remember who Ham was.
Arkansas.
Arkansas. Anyway, but you get the gist. I mean, all
Yeah.
people groups, and you can kind of. I think Ham may have been the Asian folks because there's.
Cause of Ham,
No. I'm just trying. I'm trying to remember.
Bacon.
You're so bad. You guys are so bad. I can't live with you guys. But anyway,
I love bacon.
I do too.
so I'm gonna skip.
Bacon's awesome.
I'm gonna skip down because we can read all of chapter 10 and it goes into great detail of all that, but let's get down here to, verse 21, start talking about Shem, because I want to talk about this. And the children who were born to Shem, and that's important because that's the line of Christ, the father of the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder. The sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, I can't even say that one, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz, actually Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad begot Selah, and Selah begot Eber, two sons whose name, one was Peleg, for his days where the earth were divided. For in his days the earth was divided. That's what I was talking about. If y'all had never looked at the world globe, look it up. Look on your phone. Look at how the countries fit together. It's not hard to see that they come apart. It's very easy.
Yeah. Like a puzzle.
And so, and what's a little bit messy here is because in Peleg's days, the earth was divided, but you'll see that Peleg is mentioned in chapter 11. So this is, like I say, a story inside of a story. It's important to know that God messed up all their languages, and then he divided the continent, so they couldn't even get back together again. I'm going to jump down to chapter 11 now. And it says, now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, and they found the plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And then they said, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Now that's funny right there, because that's prophecy. Let us make a name for ourselves. Don't worry about God. Let's make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. Well, what did God do in response to that? He scattered them. So he just basically dug their own grave right there. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The thing is, they were not building an altar to God. They were not building a church. They were not building a synagogue. They were building an altar to themselves. You understand the difference. I mean, it's a God had provided everything they had. He'd given them all of things. I mean, no different than us. Everything we own and have comes from God. And he had blessed them, and this is what they do, and it's no different than us.
Right.
And the Lord said, indeed the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do now. Nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Basically, they're on a fast track to go right back to where they just came from. If God didn't confuse their language and get them to where they would be separated in people groups. And I think part of this is God is going to choose a man. He's going to choose a people. He's going to choose a person, a family line that would lead to Christ so he could save the whole world. And so he had to kind of control it, because we don't do too well without his control. I don't mean that in the sense that we don't have free will. I just mean that he has sovereignty in all things, including the simple things. And if he didn't do this, we'd be right back on the Genesis story with pre-flood, with just a very few years. And God can see that because he's wise and he knows everything ahead of time. So he says, so come, let us go down there and confuse their language. Do you hear that? Come, let us go down and there confuse their language. Us. Now, I always think that, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost existed in a form, I'll say it like that, before beginning of time. But I do believe a lot of times early in the Old Testament that the us is probably talking about Michael and Gabriel, because of the angels that were on, because the devil has already been thrown out of heaven. There's only 3 archangels, and one of them messed up. One of them is a messenger, and that's Gabriel. One is a warrior, and that's Michael. And one was one who praised God and reflected his glory, and that was Lucifer. And he got thrown down to earth. So, guess who replaced Lucifer?
Us.
That's right. That's hard to even think about. But we are to reflect God's glory and share it with all men. And so we just can't act like Lucifer. It gets bad. But anyway. So then the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore his name is called Babel, because the Lord confused their language of all the earth. And from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So I think he scattered them over the face of all the earth, and I think it was one continuous continent. And you back up in the story, which was really actually later, and then he divided all the continents, and that's why people look a certain way on a certain continent. Period. End of story. Very, very logical. Where are we at on the question lady?
Well, I was looking in my concordance thing.
Uh-huh.
This is just a different thing. It says let us go down. It's different. It says again the plural does not refer to angels, but is a plural of majesty.
Okay.
And then it has like reference verses to Genesis 1:26 and Genesis 3:22.
Okay.
But that's just that. Okay, questions. We are at the intermingling. Is that it? Consider the inseparable intermingling of command and promise in God's call to Abram.
Are we not there?
I don't know.
No, we're not to Abram yet.
Oh, okay.
I don't think.
I saw this as the origins up here.
Yeah.
What was wrong with the attitude and activity of the men? That's it. Tower of Babel. Okay. What was wrong with the attitude and activity of they were thinking of themselves. They were like, me, me, me. And they were trying to,
Kind of like a lot of TV preachers now. Me.
What kind of judgment does God bring on those who seek supposed success in their way rather than in his way? That's still the same question.
tear it down.
That's right.
Separate it.
We don't focus on God, we fall apart pretty quickly. So I mean, I like teaching the Old Testament because all of it points to Jesus Christ, but I like teaching the Old Testament because we see God interact with people. We see how people like us, we're dum-dums and we just mess up and we can see it. It's easy to see. And the character development a lot of times is pretty remarkable. We can see we can see their heart. God is not afraid to show us what people's hearts are like. And we need to see that because sometimes we don't want to look at our own heart, and I think that's important. Now we're going to move on down to Abram, which is very important. I'm going to just say one thing about Abram. Like I said earlier, God chose a man, Abram, who was a pagan. There was no such thing as a Hebrew prior to Abram. There was no such thing as an Israelite. There was no such thing as a Jew. Everybody was pretty much a pagan at that point. For whatever reason, God chose this man, and he chose a place, Jerusalem, and he eventually chose a country which came out of Israel, which is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's name became Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel come from his sons, and the names of those tribes come from those sons. So, I mean, that's kind of the whole lineage of if you want to talk about who Israel is, well, technically it's Jacob, his children, but the children became the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's very important to understand that. So God, for his reasons, chose a man named Abram to become the father of all nations, but more than that, to be the father of the one who would save us all. That's the most important thing. He set a group of people apart. I guess, in God's economy, that was the way to do it. We don't understand it. It's why the Jewish people are hated to this day because of jealousy. I mean, it's just that whole idea that, we're God's chosen people. Well, they are. And I don't believe in replacement theology. There are people who say that because they're Christians, replace the Jewish people. The Jewish people will always be God's people. We are grafted in. We are equals. We are blessed because we're adopted and we have equal share in the kingdom, but we are not Jewish.
What about like genealogy, if you do your genealogy back to, like, your roots and which you came from, because like my mom's family's, they're Jewish.
We're all Jewish, some. I think, I mean, I've done the thing, I've got like 2% Jew in me. I mean, that's kind of not
Like
much.
they came from German right on the boat, you know?
Yep. But I mean, that's no, how do I say this? If you don't accept Christ as your Savior and you're a Jew, that doesn't save you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's becomes irrelevant. They're still God's people, but you still got to know Jesus at this point, because Messiah has come, he will return, and when he comes back, his whole focus will be the Jewish people, but from what prophecy says, there'll be 144,000 Jewish young men that will go out and convert the world, starting off with the Jewish people, which is what Christ tried to do the first time. It just didn't work.
We're still waiting for him to come.
I know. And it's so crazy because you read prophecy and you read scriptures, it describes exactly what he would look like. But they only listen to the parts they wanted to hear. Do you know anybody that's like that? They read the Bible and they go, well, I think he's going to be a ruler when he comes, and I think he's going to overthrow the Romans, and I think he's going to do all these things. But that's not what it said. It didn't say that. It said he'd be a suffering servant. So I mean, that's you can read into what you want it to say, but it's not there.
That's why it's so important that we be servants.
All right, I need another reader to start off with wherever we're at. We're on verse 10, is that where we are? Where are we at? Who wants to read?
10:10?
10:10,
In the beginning of
or
the.
11:10,
Okay,
11:10, sorry.
okay.
Remember, this is Shem is the line of the Semitic people. That's where the word comes from, Shem.
These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 35 years and begat Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begot Salah 403 years and begat sons and daughters. And Salah lived 30 years and begat Eber. And Salah lived after he begat Eber 403 years and begat sons and daughters. And Eber lived 430 years and begat Peleg. And Eber lived after he begat Peleg 430 years and begat sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and begat Reu. And Peleg lived after he begat Reu 209 years and begat sons and daughters. And Reu lived 230 years and begat Serug. And Reu lived after he begat Serug 207 years and begat sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and begat Nahor. And Serug lived after he begat Nahor 200 years and begat sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years and begat Terah.
I'll grab it from there.
Okay.
This is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begot Lot. And Haran died before the father of Terah in his native land of Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren, and she had no child. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, and the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, his son's wife, Abram's wife. And they went out and went with Ur of the Chaldeans to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Now, one of the most important verses of all the Bible, or sections of the Old Testament, starts in chapter 12. I want to look at something. We got about 5 minutes. I want to start this so it gets us in a good place for next week. Go find something real quick. Let's see.
I'm glad our names have evolved.
You got,
Yeah.
Arphaxad sounds like
Yeah, I didn't want to be
a
God.
narcotic,
You
doesn't it?
glad your name's
Wait,
not Arphaxad?
well, it sounds a lot like
Mine's
the
Gladys.
Egyptian names. You know, Arphaxad looks a lot like
Gladys Heather.
Gladys Heather, not Gladys Knight. Just saying.
What you want?
Okay, I'm gonna tie two things together real quick, and that'll leave us in a great place for next week. So, I know we didn't do the questions very well, we'll run back to them, next time. But in the beginning of chapter 12 is a great statement. So like I said, God chose Abram. Abram's dad was a pagan, his whole household was pagan. And so out of all the many people on earth, here we have like a Noah type story. God chooses this man. He saw something special in him. He saw something about his character. We don't know, but he chose this man because God, that's how God does it. And it says, now the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I'm not telling you where you're going to go. I'm just going to grab you, and you're going to take off.
Hey.
Think about that for a minute, that God chose somebody, didn't even tell him where he's going to send them, and he obediently goes. How many of us would do that? God just says, okay, I'm going to take you away from all you know, from your pagan gods, from your whole way of life, and I'm going to send you out, and I want you to go do it. And you just say, I'm in, I'm all in, I'm just going to go do that. That's tough. I mean, think
Yes.
about that, okay? And then this is what he promises him if he does that. So there's a promise. He says, I will make you a great nation, I will bless you, and I'll make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, I will curse those who curse you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And then it says, so Abram departed, and the Lord had spoken to him. We'll stop right there. But what I want to tell you is, if you go over to Galatians 3, let me find it, 14, it says that the blessing of Abraham might come upon the Gentiles in Christ Jesus, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. That verse is telling us that because of Jesus Christ, we receive the blessings of Abraham. You want to hear what the blessings of Abraham are again? I will make you a great nation. We're Christians. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. All Christians shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Those promises came to us because of Jesus Christ.
Still
Still
just
hold
today.
true.
Amen.
Still hold
Still
true.
just.
And that's to me, that's why we read the Old Testament. That's why it's important. We have to understand, yes, we are grafted in. We are not genetic heirs. Well, we are, like say, 2%. 2% heirs of Jewish people. But we are 100% spiritual heirs because of Jesus Christ. And that's the most important thing that we can take from what we learned today, is that we are blessed because of Him. I'm a flawed person. I've messed up a whole bunch in my whole life. But I can guarantee you, when people mess me up now, they get messed up. And it's in this life. I know they'll get messed up in the next life. But I actually see when people harm, even any of us, when people try to harm us, God takes care of it. It's not ours to get revenge. And that's the thing. We got to really work on that. You talked about that a minute ago with your family and what's going on and all that. And you want to get, as we say, get stupid, you know. Let God take care of it. Pray for those people. Pray for those people.
Right.
You know, because I guarantee you,
In my
God can do
opinion,
so much more. God can do so much more to affect change in people. And sometimes it's the wrong way, but He can affect change and sometimes bring things around, especially if you pray for them. I mean, I just know what's happened in people around me when they try to do us in. And I don't care who you are, the devil's going to use those that you love around you to try to do you in. That's just the nature of it. So He is the deceiver. That's what He's good at. So I want y'all to all take it to heart that God loves you and you are blessed. Amen?
Amen.
Who's going to pray us out of here? I don't care who does it.
You can. You can.
Heavenly Father, we just come to you, we're just so thankful and so blessed for